This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Well, Steve, I'm going to start this special interview out with a riddle for you. If you've been to a NASCAR race in the past couple of years, you've seen this driver on track, but you probably don't know his name. But lucky for us, we do.
He drives in all the series on track.
He does, and his name is Josh Novak. And Josh, welcome to the Team Blaney Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Didn't think you'd be introduced that way, did you?
No, that was a great introduction. I like that.
So, Josh, you are an integral part of the NASCAR, not just the Cup Series, but as Steve said, Xfinity Series, Truck Series, the weekend at the racetrack, and because of that, you are one of the drivers out there. I don't know what to call it specifically. It's like the track prep team. It's not the track drying team. You drive one of those big trucks out there that helps get racing going every weekend.
Yeah, it's called the Elgin Track Sweeper. It's essentially a specially built road sweeper that's for racetrack. So it can go in certain bankings without leaking any fluids out of it or anything like that. It's a little bit heavier duty, so it can go on the racetrack. I didn't realize before I started how much that Elgin actually can do. It does a lot of stuff.
Yeah, for those who are unfamiliar, totally unfamiliar, you actually have a TikTok page under Janman 33, JANMANN 33, and every once in a while when NASCAR lets you, you'll kind of put out a little video behind the scenes. And the one I saw that was really, really a big one was I think it's Charlotte for the 600 there when it rained that weekend, and you were actually just emptying out that thing. How much water was in there?
I was completely full, and I believe when the back end is completely full, it's 1,200 gallons. So it was tip top full. Like I turned the back engine off, and you could see the water spitting out of the side door, and I'm like, yeah, I need to go dump. So, that was one of my more popular videos. If I'm on the track, any one of my videos that I'm on track, it usually is a pretty popular video. So it's kind of neat.
Now, kind of like explain to us, like, where you came from and how you got to NASCAR. Because when we do these interviews with a lot of different people we've done, they have a certain path where they slept on somebody's couch, or they were a mechanic here and they went to the dirt track. Yours is a little bit different because of what you do. How did you get to NASCAR? What kind of things were you able to do in your career to get to where you're at now?
So I started off driving a regular semi truck, hauling freight across the country. I was in a truck competition. They call it like a truck rodeo up in North Dakota, because my company was based out of there, and I got second place. Nice big old trophy that sits above my mantle. And then I ended up, I met a girl, moved to Arkansas, and I went local. And on Facebook, I'm in a group, an Army group and a trucker group. And this one guy, he was in both groups with me. And he said, oh, I started working for NASCAR. I'm like, oh, tell me more about it. He'd show me pictures. And at the end of the season, he's like, I'm leaving. Why don't you put your application in? And I'm like, all right, I will. And this was back in 2019. So put my application in. I drove from Arkansas to North Carolina for the interview. They called me 2 days later saying, hey, you want to come work? I'm like, yup. So January of 2019, I drove out and embarked on my first season of NASCAR. And that season, I did cup boxes. So I hauled around the 24, the 15, the 4, and 18. So that's some of the pit boxes I hauled that year.
And this is, what company is this actually working for, NASCAR, or is this?
Their only customer is NASCAR and NASCAR teams. It's called Champion Tire and Wheel. Great company. It's a lot of fun to work for them.
And now, so you just mentioned the fact that you are hauling pit boxes. So people might think that the trucks that are out, we've interviewed hauler drivers on this podcast before. They might think that the team hauler has everything in it that everybody needs. But in fact, your company kind of steps in and brings a lot of the extra equipment around to the track that they need to operate throughout the weekend.
Correct. Yep. We haul their pit boxes, their little, they used to be called crash carts. I don't know what they're called now. It's the little box that sits behind their pit box on pit road. We haul some of their generators, golf carts, things like that, grills for some of the teams that they do their own cooking. We haul their grills and stuff, their fridges.
So, well, we were doing a little history on you, and we saw some things in the past there that you've done too that kind of like are interesting, because nobody's like quite done some of the things you've done, and you're still a young guy too. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you were famous in your hometown?
So, I'm famous there for a couple reasons. The first reason, I was the youngest person in Michigan to ever run for a county sheriff. I didn't get it, but I ran twice. And in between the two elections, I actually put out a video on YouTube of me ordering Taco Bell in the voice of Elmo, and it went crazy viral. I think it's at 3 million views right now. But it's like 14 or 15 years old, so it's I still get comments on it. I still get a handful of comments every week, and people are like, man, this was like my jam back in the day, or I can't believe I'm still here watching this video 12 years, 13 years later. And I'm just like, man, this is great. I got a lot of fans out there and they really love it. And I really wish I would have kept up with it, but I didn't.
Steve mentioned your TikTok. So obviously you had that experience like really early on with social media back then. What got you into kind of starting this TikTok that turned theme toward kind of what your job is, and giving kind of people a little bit of a background or a behind the scenes peek on maybe on an effort in NASCAR that they have known nothing about?
Yeah, I figured that a lot of people don't really understand what goes on to prepare for a NASCAR race or setting it up. So I figured, hey, I can show a couple things, because a couple of the drivers here have pretty big followings on TikTok, and they did the same thing. I'm like, let me try it out. And the first video I did that actually got some attention was me hooking up airlines to a boring trailer, and I got like 14,000 views. And I'm like, I didn't even do anything though. I put an airline on the trailer. That's all I did. So after that, I kind of gained a little bit of traction. Like, I'm not like huge on TikTok, but I do have enough subscribers I can go live. So I've done a few lives, and people ask me questions and I'll give them answers, and it's usually when I'm sitting at the racetrack when I get there, and it's like the night before unload or something. Well, I got time, I sit out and I hang out and I interact and answer questions and things like that.
Yeah, I think I saw one from Atlanta, and it was like you was great because you were able to just answer question after question, and pretty much till everybody was done asking questions. It's it was really a cool thing. What does your week look like? Like we were talking, I think before we went on about how you don't get close to home very often. During the 36 weeks, 37 weeks, 38 weeks that the season goes on, what does your travel look like? And then what does your weekend itself look like as far as what you have to do?
So Sunday at the end of the race, I take my Elgin to like the maintenance building, and they have like piles. I'll dump my Elgin. I'll dump all the stuff I've picked up throughout the weekend. And then I hold water on board. I have a 300-gallon water tank. So I'll spray it out with the pressure washer. I have a pressure washer on there. I'll spray out the back end, get it clean, looking good for the road. And then I dump all the water out of it from the holding tank. And then I take it to where our trucks are at, where the Tundra guys are. And I load my trailer, and I haul one Air Tundra, my Elgin, and our company van, one of our company vans. We have two of them. I'll get on the road, and depending on how far away the track is, like I'll use Kansas, for instance. I made it a couple hours down the road and called it a night. Took my 10 hours off, got back on the road, and finished out my journey here. to Bristol. We'll usually get there the day before unload. So we'll take the trucks off our trailer and just park them, kind of get things ready. We'll sit around, we'll hang out with other guys who got there early, kind of BS a little bit. And then the next morning we'll get up. We usually start doing everything between 7 and 8 in the morning. We have to put together all the air tundra. So I help on that since I'm still technically part of the air tundra crew. We'll put them together, and then we go park our semi trucks, and then we go to our hotel. And depending on, how early or how late we get to the hotel, we might have a day or two off. And then Thursday this week starts all the on track stuff. So we'll go to the track. We attend the track service meeting because we're on track. After the meeting, they have what is called breakouts, and each little division of the track service team goes and does their thing with their like NASCAR liaison. So, the tow truck guys, fire EMS, restoration, which I'm part of restoration. We'll go, and usually our liaison is the race director for that race. So he'll talk to us. He'll let us know like the schedule of events, what he'll be looking for. And his main job is to make sure we stay safe on the track while we do our thing. Whether, it's a cleanup truck going out and putting down product, if there's oil out, or me going out to vacuum up that trail oil dry. He's looking out for us to make sure we're out there. So we don't just go out there and drive out on the track willy-nilly. We'll stop at the edge of where our cutout is, and he'll say, okay, Elgin, you're clear to go out, go high. And then I go out, I go up to the high side of the racetrack, and I do what he says. And then I get cleared back to my cutout to make sure I don't get hit by a car, especially if I'm on the low side of the track and they just did pit stops and I have to cross the exit to the pit road. I usually stop right before the exit and let the race director tell me, hey, Elgin, you're clear to cross pit road. Because if I don't, a car will hit me, and that will not be good. And I don't really want to make ESPN's top 10 list of stupid sports mistakes.
I was going to bring up something similar to that, and it has a Blaney connection to it. Now, this would have been well before your time with the track crew, but Dave Blaney, Ryan's dad, was leading the Daytona 500 when that kind of infamous Juan Pablo Montoya hitting the track dryer truck happened, and Dave's leading the race, and there's a potential that the race was going to be called at that point. Now, I said it's before your time, but is that still among that group? Is that still like a story that they kind of hand down over the years, or still kind of point to in just a way to how to maybe to avoid anything like that in the future?
Yeah, it comes up every once in a while between the guys, especially the ones who were there when it happened. And that's why we all wear like helmets and fire suits now, because of that. At least that's what I'm told. So I got a fire suit I wear, I got a helmet I wear, but that's directly because of Juan Pablo Montoya hitting the jet dryer. Wow. And I remember watching that race, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, that's crazy. So there's always... Go ahead.
Go ahead.
There's always potential for a mistake to happen, and you don't want to be that guy. But that's why they tell you, keep your head on a swivel, keep looking, even if they say you're clear. Look out your mirrors, look out the window to make sure you are. I do have a lot of trust in the race director though, because he sees everything, or she. So I do have a lot of trust that they are telling me truthful things, that I'm good to go. So I don't get hit by a race car, because I can guarantee that's going to hurt.
So, okay, we get to, let's say, race day. How early do you got to be there on race day? And then what kind of like prep do they do before race versus, after a race or during a race even?
So it depends on what time the race is. So like, let's say the race is at 2:00. Track service meeting is typically going to be about noon. And we want to get there to kind of beat the traffic if it's one of those races where we have to. So our hotel is usually within a half hour from the racetrack. So we have to leave and get to the racetrack before track service meeting. Usually we'll stop at a gas station, fill up our rental cars with some gas, get some snacks or something, a drink. Sometimes it's an early day. Like now we blow the track off before every race. And that's usually like 4 hours before track service meeting, especially on the cup days, because they have like pace car rides, they bring out the stage. So we can't do an adequate cleaning before the race. So we have to do it like way before track service meeting. So there's been times we've been at the racetrack by 7 o'clock to get ready and do stuff. And then we're off for 4 hours before track service meeting. It's like, okay, that's fun.
Now, Daytona is the closest track to me, so I've sat through numerous rain delays and crash cleanups and a variety of things. What is it like to maybe be part of a team that fans probably don't want to see out on the track too often? Because if you're out on the track, that means cars most likely aren't out on track, except for maybe just the typical stage breaks or something like that.
Yeah, there's been times we've been booed going out, even before I did the Elgin. Like last season, I was strictly on Air Tundras. We'd go out and they would cheer for us. Say, "Oh, yay, awesome, they're out here." And then after, it stops raining, we're driving the track, it starts raining again, we got to stop. They get a little agitated and they're like, "Okay, come on, it's time to race." And we have got booed before. Nothing too crazy. Maybe it was kind of just a joke, but we've been booed before, and it's part of the job. The race doesn't go on without a dry track, so we got to be out there to dry it. So,
do you ever get frustrated? Because again, having sat through many of these, and even trying to think if it was Atlanta, I think it was Atlanta, yeah, earlier this year or a few months ago, where the race was about to start. You guys got the track dry, everything's ready to go. They did some ceremonies, and then it just rains again, and that just causes another delay. And then it rains again later on, and the race gets called. Is it ever frustrating? Like right when you guys get the all clear, everything's dry, go to pull off, and then seconds later it just starts to downpour again. Now I know it's a job, but it's still probably a little frustrating.
Yeah, it does get a little frustrating because you've been out there for a couple hours making them laps to get the track dry. And you're just like, man, all that work, I just wasted all that. I mean, I guess it's not really wasted because we don't know if the rain's going to come back or not. So, but yeah, it gets a little frustrating because you did all that work and then you got to stop and you got to do it all over again. I mean, some tracks take 2 hours to get completely dry. Some tracks are a little bit faster. If it's warm out, it takes less time because the heat from the track will help dry too. And if it's windy, I think we had a track dry in like 45 minutes one day. I can't remember which one it was. It was a smaller track, though, not real big. We had the track dry in 45 minutes. I was like, yeah.
When the NASCAR app has scanner, and they do actually have the officials channel on there. And sometimes actually when there is a weather delay, I actually listen. So what, everybody has like a code name or something like that, or each truck they call truck out to the track by the type of truck or something like that. How they call you out there?
Yeah, they'll call you out by like what your truck is. So like a cleanup truck, it's usually like a white pickup truck, and it's got the attachment on the back that's got like a broom and like a hopper full of that oil dry. That'll be a cleanup truck. And they're usually numbered based on what turn they're in. So like cleanup 1 would be like turn 1, cleanup 3 would be turn 3. Me is just the Elgin. If we're at so any road course or 2 mile track, we'll have 2 Elgins. The red Elgin, which is me, I'll be Elgin 1, and the blue Elgin will be Elgin 2. And some tracks have their own Elgin. So Kansas has their own Elgin. So they'll do the same thing. They'll call him Elgin 2. They'll call me Elgin 1. Calls Elgin 2. I sit there. I watch all the action happen. I don't get to go out and play on the racetrack. But yeah, I don't listen to the fire channel. That's a whole separate channel just because it would be so much traffic.
Yeah.
So I'm on the specific race director channel that the race director is. The wreckers are, the fire, ambulance, wreckers, they're all on the same channel. So they deal with another person that's up in the tower with the race director that's sending them out to an accident or a scene that they got to take care of. So I don't get to hear any of that. I just hear what's ever on the main channel.
Now you mentioned that you were watching the race when there was the incident with Juan Pablo. So you have been watching NASCAR for at least, a little while. Did you grow up as a kid watching the sport too? And did you have favorite drivers along the way?
I did. I actually lived in Daytona Beach for about 6 months when I was like 5. And I remember going past the racetrack all the time, but that's about, I believe I started watching about 92. Being a young, I didn't know what it was all about. I just liked seeing the cars flip over because, I'm like 5 or 6. I'm like, oh, cool. As I got older, I realized you don't really want to see the crashes like that. So yeah, I've been a fan for a long time. I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but my favorite driver was Jeff Gordon. My mom hated it because she was a Mark Martin and Rusty Wallace fan. And there's really no driver that I dislike. I have a like towards all of the drivers. Other than that, yeah, right now I follow like Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, and Eric Jones. I like him. He's a Michigan boy too, so
Yeah.
I got a Brett Keselowski, the two guys from Michigan. I kind of follow them a little bit. I like Eric Jones a little bit more than Brett Keselowski, but I'll still root him on. I mean, he's been doing some cool stuff this year, so.
Do you ever get any interaction with any of the drivers, during a weekend at all, or
not a whole lot. I have seen like who did I see? Oh, I saw Ryan Preece last weekend doing a track walk, and I kind of gave him a nod. He waved to me. I actually, when it was at Martinsville when he got the pole, I actually went up to him and congratulated him because he's also one of my favorite drivers. Funny story. Back in 2019, we went to GoPro in Mooresville, and I actually got to race with him. Well, I ended up having the back end of his car from the first Talladega race, and it was in my car. And one of the guys I worked with was with me, and he's a jokester, he's one of them guys. And see this guy in a big lifted truck park next to me. He got out and he's like, "Oh yeah, hey, we got a back end of a Ryan Preece car in the back seat of his car. We'll sell it to you real cheap." And he just kind of laughed and kept going. Turns out it was Ryan Preece. We tried to sell Ryan Preece. I'm like, oh, great. But I figured I was going to try to keep up with him at GoPro. No, he was like 20 seconds ahead of me the whole time. I thought I was going fast. That dude didn't even slow down on the corners. I'm like, I don't know how you do it, but he's a professional race car driver. I'm not. So that's why he was that much better than me.
That's kind of going to be my next question, was that you've made probably more laps than anybody outside of a driver out on these Cup Series tracks. Did it ever cross your mind? Did it ever cross your mind to actually get into a race car at any level? So, I mean, you've been go-karting, but any other inkling to do it beyond that? Because you probably know all the good lines.
Yeah, I've always thought of it, as a kid, even as a teenager. I should drive like a late model or a dirt car or something, and it's just never materialized. But I do know some people that work for the NASCAR Experience, and I'm getting a ride in a car before I die. So, like, whether I take a ride or actually drive it, I'm going to do it soon. Kind of hoping Phoenix I get that chance, because I think they're going to be out there for Phoenix. So I'm like, let me get a ride.
I got to do it one time. I got a ride along. I wasn't driving it, but I got to do a ride along at Bristol, actually, of all places. And the G-forces just in the seat are they're incredible. Yeah, it's quite a feeling. I can't imagine driving it, but I was sitting there for it.
Wow. Yeah, Bristol is one of those tracks that the Elgin track sweeper does not go in the banking on. So I don't get to experience the banking in a vehicle, but I have climbed up the wall in the middle of turns 1 and 2, and let me tell you, it does not look that steep until you actually run up that thing, and you're like, wow. And then you get up there and you stand up, and you turn around and face the inside of the racetrack, and then you kind of get that wobbly feeling because like it's so steep and you can't really see the ground in front of you when you're looking straight ahead. And it took me a minute to get my bearings to actually come back down, but you kind of want to go down sideways. If you go forward, you might fall over. So I went down side.
Yeah, I could see going end over end pretty easily.
Yeah.
Now, I've mentioned we've talked to, hauler drivers before on the show, and they've kind of mentioned, they were in the industry outside of NASCAR, hauling stuff, just like you were, and just kind of discovered this idea like, oh, I could, I love the sport. I could be involved in it, even in kind of the capacity that I am right now. Would you recommend kind of what you do, even if it wasn't part of the track maintenance team, but even if you were just one of the ones that was hauling the equipment around the country, would you, recommend this type of job to anybody else out there? And is it possible? Is it attainable for people out there to do what you do?
It absolutely is. They actually hire from all over the country. They don't require a racing background. They do require you to be a hard worker, though. But yeah, anybody can apply. You do have to have a Class A CDL updated with your medical card to be able to do this job. Unless you want to work in the tire shop, you can do that. But we hire all sorts of people. No racing background required. And then if you ever want to move on to like a team job or something, it's a little bit easier to attain a team job when you've said you've worked for Champion.
Well, Josh, I really want to thank you for giving us this time. We've been following you on social media pretty much all year long. I know Steve was a big fan early on, and really was hoping we can get to chat with you. And like I said, we're big fans. We've seen you run plenty of laps for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I tell all my friends, like I run every race and I finish 180 laps down. That's what I tell them. Because I get out there and I do at least 5, 6, 7 laps. So.
Awesome.
But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
All right. Thanks again.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.